It wasn't intentional. It was just the thing is, I
You
pulled
all
a
got the
t-shirt
memo.
out. We did, yeah.
I've got to admit, I was intentional with my shoes, but
They
I
are
only own
actually.
two pairs of
Really?
green shoes.
Yeah.
They're very nice.
Yeah, so this kind of wasn't intentional, but it's worked out really well, I think.
That's very
and I
good.
love what you're wearing as well. This
my
kind of
bees.
lovely little
I've got my
bee kind of
bees, I
dress.
know.
It's great. I mean, also, I know we've just seen a dog outside, and I wanted to address this. Have you? Because you mentioned working dogs. Yours are working dogs. Do you live on a farm? Are you a farm girl
no.
or not?
He's a working Cocker Spaniel. It's a breed. It's a breed.
Right,
And
okay.
He thinks he's a working Cocker Spaniel, but he's actually a lapdog.
Yeah.
Who does absolutely nothing.
Right.
But we do have the weeniest little small holding.
Right, okay. It's just one of those things that you feel like you got the vibe of like you're out and about all the time, you're hands on, you get things done, you know. So that's all I pointed that out
So
for.
I thought this meeting again was sort of serendipitous, right? I talked about this
You
just
did,
about
yes.
20 minutes ago. So your name cropped up in a meeting, probably must have been 2 years ago. I was with Bob from Hexhamshire Organics.
Exactly.
and Alex
Amazing.
from Hiem,
Yeah.
Oh,
and we were talking about a cookery book,
where I've never been yet.
right?
Yeah.
And I can't remember. It was Bob. And your name came up, and I said, Harriet Lamb. He said, yes, she lives in Northumberland. And I said, I had no idea. So I felt a little bit...
You did
So
know
I
that.
didn't, no, not before that I didn't.
Oh,
I didn't. I had no
I
idea.
thought you knew.
Not an idea.
When I came to your event that you held in Newcastle.
Yeah, well, that was 2 years ago.
Yes. I was
So there
living
was
in
a-
Slaley then.
Yeah. So there was
Slaley, yeah, Hexham. Yeah.
There was that little crossover point where I had
Yes.
no idea that you'd found your way to
Okay,
Northumberland,
sorry.
which is pretty
I
incredible.
didn't know you didn't know.
No.
But yeah, Bob and Anne did this brilliant local Hexhamshire Organics, so a box scheme where you got fantastic hyper-local
Yes.
crisp food. So it's really lovely. But now they've moved on to doing this veggie garden for a multi-starred restaurant.
Yes. But I want to go back just for context for you, because I was going to be honest with you. I've got to put on the table. I was a bit starstruck. Right? We could have get you to come on the podcast, right?
Yeah, because
Right,
he said he was starstruck, yeah.
Well, it's going to be disappointment all the way down.
No,
Sorry.
because right, we've never. I don't think we've never spoken for more than 10 minutes.
No, we haven't.
Right. But our paths have crossed several times. So I go right back to it must have been around early 2000, and I was in my early 20s, and I just started getting involved in the Fairtrade movement, right? If you remember, Tradecraft used to have a speakers scheme.
Yes.
So I'd opened a restaurant. I've been doing some work trying to talk to kids about ethical entrepreneurship.
Sorry, where was the restaurant?
The restaurant was in Gosforth,
In Gosforth, lovely.
right?
Yeah.
And just what we were talking about earlier, the whole premise was fair trade meets local, right? So my work with the small holdings and small suppliers in the Northeast started then, but so did my fair trade work. So I got the role of I think it was chair of the Newcastle Fair Trade Partnership, taking over. It was actually quite daunting. Richard Adams.
Oh, that's quite daunting. So Richard Adams is like I was going to say godfather, but that sounds a bit wrong, doesn't it? Grandfather. He is the founder. He is
godfather
the
to grandfather.
founder of the fair trade movement, really. You could definitely, if there was one person, I mean, fair trades has got many mothers and fathers. They always say failures are an orphan and successes have many parents. And Fairtrade has many, many people involved all over the world. But one of the leading people was Richard Adams, who lives up the Tyne Valley, and had this idea that surely we could do something to show how trade could be made fair. And so he tried lots of different ways, and being involved with Tradecraft and as a company that did fair trade, and then with the fair trade mark as the next step to go from a company that was dedicated to fair trade to saying, well, let's make all companies fair trade. That was Richard Adams, who still lives there near Corbridge.
Yeah. And at that time, he lived round the corner from me. He lived in Gosforth.
Okay, so you took over for him. So go on. So what
catering
happened?
for his birthday party.
Oh,
So I took over from Richard. You know, I was young and I was a bit nervous, a little bit of imposter syndrome. And we went on there was a seminar, and I can't remember where it was, but there was you and Safia Mini on the panel at that time. And I wasn't I was a volunteer then. So I was doing had my own business, and I was doing the voluntary work with Tradecraft. And it was just, you inspired me, and the penny dropped that there was, I don't want to say there was a way, it wasn't about a career or trying to create a job. It was about doing something meaningful that you could get paid to do.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where my Fairtrade journey started. And within 3 years of that restaurant, I went to work for Tradecraft.
What happened to the restaurant though?
Oh, we closed it down. We had
too tough.
It was too tough. Yeah. I mean, I had my son was 6 months old. Yeah. And it wasn't as hard as it is now. Yeah. In terms of margins and all the pressure that's on supply chains and everything else. But it was a different business landscape then. Yeah. So I think I said to you, crowdfunding wasn't a thing. It was the old days where you had to go to the bank with a business plan to even open a bank account for your business. There was no Monzo or, all these banks that make it easy for people to just start something quickly. So there was a lot of formality and social media.
But you had it for like 4 years or something, didn't you, Chris? Because I think the average restaurant time is 18 months or something like that.
So exactly, you're right. That's not bad, is it?
It's not bad, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's 4 years. And then you must have learned so much as well about what you're doing. What you've always done is trying to change the food system. And you learn so much when you're, trying to run a restaurant and do things differently and source ingredients well.
Well, that was it.
It's so tough, isn't it?
It was tough. But I think it was what gravitated me to and what took me into the fair trade work. It was the whittling down the supply chain and getting to the supplier. Yeah. So I guess I lost interest in the front of house stuff. And I really wanted to understand the DNA of how these things worked, how supply chains work.
Well, that's where the story comes from as well. It's like where it starts from. And I think that's important as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who are the people who actually grow the thing to get to the plate? Yeah. I think that's the most important thing. I mean, is that why you're passionate about this as well?
It absolutely is. Shall I tell you the story about how I got involved? Shall I?
Bring this along.
Did you bring my book?
I'm going to sign it as well, this book. So yeah.
But that was my inspiration. So I want to know where this started.
Perfect, because you got Fairtrade bananas there.
I got Fairtrade sitting there. Fighting the banana wars. That's where it all started. Yeah. So I picked up these bananas on my way here in the station. So how it all started was I used to work at a campaign group called the World Development Movement in those days. It's called Global Justice now. And we were campaigning to think, well, how can you put more fairness into these global supply chains that are owned by these vast multinational companies? And one of the things we were looking at was, well, how could we support the trade unions in Latin America? Who had been writing to us and just saying, we're under all this pressure, their companies won't recognise us, and there's this terrible problem of using so many agrochemicals. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I've been thinking, how can it be that bananas in our shops are so cheap? If you think they've come from the other side of the world and what goes into them. And so we were wanting to do that research. And so I went to Costa Rica. I was invited by the trade unions there. Carlos was the guy who met me, who had these fantastic, handlebar moustache, absolutely brilliant. And he met me there, and we were driving through the plantations. Yeah. Mile after mile after mile of banana trees. And it's completely quiet. And you can't, first you think, why is it so quiet? And then you realise, there are no birds. There's no normal life because the agrochemicals that they've sprayed mean there's no animals, there's no birds, there's no people living there. And so it's this very weird atmosphere on the plantations. And they stretch for miles and miles, owned by these big US multinational companies. And then we come to the house of the person we're going to visit. And on the way, Carlos tells me that he himself is one of the burnt, they're called, and really tens of thousands of men who worked on the plantations were left sterile because they were spraying a chemical called DBCP, which was banned. It was banned for use in the US, but was still being made and exported for use in Latin America, even though it was banned because they knew it had a negative impact on the human reproductive system.
So that's how they get around it, because the
they exported
rules are
the
different.
chemicals.
Yeah.
So then there were all these people left sterile, but actually Maria wasn't so lucky. So her husband was also a sprayer, and she got pregnant. But then when her baby was born, his head was 4 times bigger than his body. It's severe encephalitis, it's called. And she'd shown me the photos. He had no lips, no nose, no eyelashes or anything. And she said the worst thing was he just cried all the time because he was obviously in severe pain. And when she went to pick him up, which is a mother, that's your natural instinct when your baby cries. When she went to pick him up, it just made the crying worse. It clearly somehow made the pain worse. And she said there was nothing I could do but cry with him. And I knew then, as I still know now, that there has to be a better way to grow our food. To grow our food, to trade food, there has to be a way that puts people first, not last. And so from that moment, I got involved in thinking, well, what is it that we can do as people who love and enjoy bananas and consume them? And that really matters. Countries want to earn their income from selling bananas. So how can we make sure that the farmers and the workers are getting a fair price and that people aren't cutting corners like they were using those chemicals that were later, by the way, banned and are no longer used, just to be clear. And so then I was very involved in the whole starting when people were thinking, well, what if we could build on the success of companies like Tradecraft, who had started the Fairtrade movement here in the Northeast as the home of Tradecraft and Richard Adams, as we were mentioning, but make it much more available to everybody. And so that came with the idea of the Fairtrade mark, that you'd have a certification scheme that if you saw this little cheery blue and green mark on a product, you'd know that it had come from farmers, smallholder farmers or workers, but that they were organised and that they were getting a fairer price for their products. And then you could buy that with confidence. So I got involved in the really early days of Fairtrade bananas. And it was super interesting because everyone kept saying to us, you'll never make it work. You'll never make it work. It won't work. It won't work.
Can I ask a
And it
question
did.
before you go
Yes.
on? Was that, so little Harriet, pre those times, was that social justice fire in you then? Or did it emerge over time, or was it always there?
Well, I think it was partly always there because I was really lucky that as a child we lived in India. So my father actually was involved, worked for Formica. So the Formica factory.
Yeah.
He worked at the Formica factory on Tyneside.
Yeah. No way.
And that's how I fell in love with Northumberland ever, because we used to spend lots of time in Bellingham.
Yeah.
Yeah, near Bellingham, Charlton, a little hamlet near Bellingham. So, and then Formica wanted to open a factory in India. So we went out as a family as well then. Because of Formica, we went to India.
That's blown my mind slightly.
So then, and then I went back to India. I just fell in love with it. But that made me realise about the scale of poverty that exists in the world, but also that people can tackle poverty themselves. And we just need to make sure that we in the rich countries are supporting them with the right policies on trade or aid or not selling arms to repressive regimes. There are the things that we can do here that will enable people to make poverty history for themselves. And in a way, I always thought Fairtrade was such a brilliant example of that. It was such a great coming together of people who go shopping with people who grow products to sort of think, well, we can show we can do it differently.
Because you've been raised with clearly a kind of opportunity to see two different worlds.
Yeah.
So that kind of there.
Yeah.
And it's up to you what you do with that, So you're seeing people who are, impoverished and going, right, is this right? Is this wrong? So it must be in you to go, I don't think this is right. You must feel it in your bones.
Yeah, I think I do. I don't want to exaggerate, but,
No, I don't think you are.
But I do. I've always felt that I want to spend my time pushing for social and environmental justice. And actually, it's really interesting, having spent lots of time in India, people in India have a much more integrated view that you can't have social justice if you don't have environmental justice, and the other way around, you know, that the two are absolutely linked. And we in the West have been a bit inclined to think, well, that's nature and that's the environment over there and that's people over here. Whereas I learned in India that how strongly the two connect, and that if you want to have social justice for people, you also need to be caring for their natural world.
Yeah.
So I definitely learned that from the different movements in India
Yeah.
at the time.
There's always the fear, though. I mean, I remember working in India, and I always used to say to myself, you're talking about this desire coming from within. If I ever normalise this, then I've got to stop doing this work. Because I remember, because, you know, you'll come across people that have, you know, they'll be expats or people who've moved to India, they've spent 10, 15, 20 years there, and they get sucked into the system, and that poverty becomes normalised.
Yeah.
And I remember my first trip flying into Delhi. I was with, remember Joe Osman?
Do I remember Joe
We're going to get you on the
Osman? Of
podcast.
course I remember Joe
So
Osman.
I went with Joe, and he kind of said, "Are you ready? Are you ready for this? If you haven't been to India before." And I remember going into Delhi and see babies being washed in the sewers, and I remember my head just at that point saying, "If I ever get to a point where I can turn my eye away from that and feel comfortable, then I've got to move on, because I don't ever want to normalise that."
Yeah.
Yeah,
'cause
and I
it does
think
happen,
that's true,
you know?
Chris, also, though, about the poverty in our own country.
Yeah.
The poverty, in, you know, really in our homeland, and also the way we treat nature. And we should never get to think, oh, well, you know, the fact we're the most nature-depleted country in Europe, and that we're going on trashing the environment, and we must never get to that sense of, oh, well. I think that's really right. We've got to hold on to that sense of that, no, that's not right, and we need to... There can be so much better ways of doing things.
Well, I was thinking about this yesterday. I was watching the news last night, and the stuff around free school meals. And I was trying to wear multiple hats and look at it from different perspectives and think it's almost like iterative decline, because you think we're accepting that this level of poverty is all right, and the more we have to put policy around it to fix the problem, but we're not actually fixing the problem.
Yeah,
we're just putting sticking plasters over it. It's a really, really dangerous, slippery slope.
Yeah, but people get worn down. People get worn down because we can't do anything about it, and that's the problem. I think that's a problem.
Yeah.
It does. It's people getting worn down. They go, oh, well, what's the point?
Yeah.
Do you mean?
I think you're right. And there's so much happening that's quite depressing. And then people also just think, oh, I've got to look after myself.
Got to get on with life. I've got things to do today.
I can't cope.
Yeah.
But then you have amazing people like Marcus Rashford leading that campaign on free school meals. I mean, that's really inspirational on the other hand, isn't it? And then you hope people get a surge of energy, and you can't keep it up all the time, but that people then pile in because they've got someone showing what's possible in terms of making...
But it's kind of the right person from a different world. And I think football, people will kind of sit up and take note where they won't normally if it's from a politician or somebody like that, because they're not in touch with that world. And it needs to be somebody who's in touch with that world, everyday folk, that will sit up and pay attention and do something about it, you know?
Well, I think that was the masterstroke behind the Fairtrade movement, wasn't it? It was kind of taking what felt like alternative values into the mainstream by being willing to kind of sit in the middle of that contradiction. It's quite a hard thing to do.
Yeah, you put that very well. But just to go, I think that and obviously in Fairtrade, we also were really pleased to have patrons and supporters from celebs. And the latest patron, most recently, was the brilliant Adjoa Ando. I don't know if you're Bridgerton fans, but she's one of the leading characters in Bridgerton, who also really passionately believes in Fairtrade. So we did always have celebs like that who really helped us. George Elagaya was our first patron.
I met George up here. He's a great guy.
Amazing. And so you had celebs, but actually I think the other thing about Fairtrade was the fact that it was those ambassadors you were talking about.
Yeah.
Because people trust and look up to celebrities, but they also trust their family, their friends, their neighbour, the people they know. And that's what was so brilliant about the Fairtrade movement. It mobilised people locally to talk about it. And then it's really relatively simple in the scheme of things. You know, you can think, well, how can little old me change world trade? I can't possibly. but I can ask for fair trade bananas and I can buy them when I see them. It's so, it's actually so simple in one way. That was the genius of enabling anybody to be part of creating the change in fair trade, because anyone can look for the mark.
It changes my mind when I'll pick something up. I'll pick it up with a fair trade logo on because I know that's right.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? And
exactly.
it's just that's a simple thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got to make it so simple, because people, you said people have got busy lives. Yeah. They've got other priorities. But if actually literally the work's been done for them, frankly, by the companies are offering only fair trade, for example, that's obviously such a great place to get to.
And it put a lot of pressure on the companies in a good way.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I remember, you know, so sitting within the product development team and the sourcing stuff, having to sit and have really difficult conversations about the origins of fair trade. Was it campaign coffee or camp coffee? Or
campaign coffee.
It was terrible.
That did set us back a few years.
Right,
it wasn't very good. It was chicory. It was basically chicory from.
But the challenge, sitting in a room and thinking, okay, so if we're going to really elevate this and take it to the next level, both in terms of its impact and its scale, we've got to get into our mindset that it's got to be good.
Yeah.
Right. So it's almost like fair trade's baked into the DNA of the product, but ultimately we had to compete with
it's got to
all
be
the other products on the shelf,
just as good, if not better.
Yeah, if not
and
better.
Actually, that was what we ran a whole campaign around that. Obviously, it's all about the companies working with the producers to get the best coffee, the best chocolate, but it was also that communicating to the public that logically a farmer will give their best product to their best customer, and fair trade will always be paying you that bit more. So logically, you will give your best bananas to fair trade. So actually, the quality will probably be better. And we did over time. We gradually changed people's perceptions about quality. Yeah. But it was really interesting going back to the early days. So the very, very first fair trade product was Maya Gold. Do you know Green and Blacks?
Yes.
You know Green and Blacks? Yes. So at that time, Green and Blacks was literally, it was a husband and wife duo in their kitchen in Sussex. And they'd been and they'd heard about these cocoa farmers in Belize who'd had an order from one of the multinational companies, and they'd planted cocoa trees. And of course, they take years to get to a stage where you've got enough cocoa. When the tree had matured, it was producing cocoa, they were ready to sell, the multinational company said, no, we've changed our mind, we don't want your cocoa anymore. So the farmers were completely left high and dry. So at that point, Sam and Joe, the inspiration behind Green and Black, said, well, we'll buy your cocoa and we'll use a local recipe of, something orange and call it Maya Gold. And so in those days, dark chocolate was much less available. And this was the very first. So we went off and we went to see the buyer in Tesco's. We said, this is going to be the first fair trade product with the mark, the first one with the mark. Yeah. And he said, oh, go away. No one's ever going to care about that. I'm not stocking it. Go away. So he went away. And then a few months later, the phone rings and it's the buyer from Tesco's. And he said, you better come back. I'm being inundated with calls from vicars who are asking me to stock fair trade and I've got to give it a go. So back we went and got that first product on the shop shelves because of the local campaigns that people had done it. People wrote and said, if only you stocked fair trade coffee, I'd buy it. Here's an ordinary bar of chocolate. I'm sending it back to you because it's not fair trade. But if only you made it fair trade, I'd buy it. And so it was a leap of faith from what people said they'd do. Would they actually do it when it was on the shop shelf, And so that was a scary moment. And then, products just sold. They took off.
It's a community just
and it's
came
the
together,
community
isn't it?
mobilising behind it. And
100%.
and it just, went on growing. And then we said, that's great, but we want to get even more mainstream. And that's when companies started saying, okay, we'll switch all our bananas to fair trade, which Sainsbury's did. Then Waitrose followed. Then the Co-op followed. That was that whole thing. They were competing to see who could offer most fair trade at one point.
I'm going to ask you two big, complex questions because I want to cover other parts of your career as well, because we could talk about fair trade for 10 hours.
Yes.
I could. I was going to start
for Britain.
Yeah, you could.
I was going to start talking about Green and Blacks there.
I know. Well, we've got a Green and Blacks. Definitely.
But just to kind of finish on that point, with Green and Blacks now, I know that's fair trade by just seeing Green and Blacks. I just know it.
Yeah.
And I know that's a trusted brand.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
that's it.
It has that.
But then you look at then that lit the fire, and you got Divine, and Divine came out and just
Amazing.
went, and they went to the US, and
Yeah.
you
And
know.
then you've got, I brought along some. I don't know if we want to have some. Tony Chocolonely, another great one.
Yeah.
Another great Fairtrade chocolate.
Fantastic.
That was started by a couple of campaigners who wanted to show you could make chocolate without using child slavery. It was initially a program, a documentary, and they got hooked, and now they make Tony Chocolonely. It's sold all over the place.
Nice chunky bar.
It's very chunky.
Thick, I know,
Great.
thick, isn't it?
Chunky.
Yeah.
Chunky.
It's a
Doorstop,
proper golden
isn't
ticket
it?
bar, that one.
Is it? Yeah. Well, it is like Willy Wonka inspired chocolate, isn't it? That's what it is. So yeah.
And Dan, I know you like nuts.
Oh yeah. Oh hey,
Cashew nuts. I mean, so there's something like 35,000 products carrying the Fairtrade mark around the world because it's a global movement. So if I'd known you loved almonds so much, I should have bought some of them.
All right, next time, eh?
So exactly. I wanted to ask, right? So obviously you've been right in this movement from the beginning. So a challenge that you've had, getting something certified, like a win, a fail, and something that almost happened that didn't.
Oh, so many difficult questions. Well, the thing that was really a challenge was it came to us because obviously the system we also certify, we go and check, you know. Yeah. You have to be able to go and check that really the farmers are organised and they really aren't using these chemicals and they are using the premium democratically in deciding how they want to invest the extra money they get from fair trade. But that was very difficult in countries in conflict. And so we had people approaching us to sell coffee from DR Congo, which is where there's huge conflict. Raisin farmers from Afghanistan was someone that Tropical Whole Foods, who have their factory just here in Sunderland, they really wanted to source raisins from Afghanistan. That's very complicated. Yeah. And then we had Zaytoon, who source olive oil from Palestine. And so that was a real challenge, is how can we, our principles of fair trade, we can't say, well, we're not going to work in countries in conflict because they're some of the people who most need that extra money that you get through fair trade. So we can't turn our back on them because we can't do it because it's more complicated to do the checking. So then we had to go through, that was quite a bit of a difficult process to go through to persuade everyone that we could work differently in countries in conflict. Yeah. And I mean, sadly, in the end, because it is all so complicated and difficult, in the end, they couldn't stay sourcing the raisins from Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. They had trouble with the quality, actually.
Yes,
it's back to
your... it
was because it was they were drying it on the ground and then they wanted to lift it up. But it somehow didn't, they never managed to get the quality good enough. So that's a fail. That didn't work. Yeah. But on the other hand, you can buy coffee from Congo, DR Congo, women's coffee even. And you can buy products from Zaytoon, which at the moment, with all the conflict in Gaza, I feel now more than ever, I'm so proud that you can buy olive oil and za'atar and soaps and dates. They are so delicious. Talking of quality. Oh, they're the best. I wish I'd got some of them.
See, Dan, Zaytoon date with a bit of marzipan inside.
Ooh. And then you're supporting those farmers who live their lives surrounded by conflict, and it's often a lifeline for them. And I remember when we launched the Zaytoon olive oil, it's a slightly dreary co-op, if the truth be known, in North London, and it was pouring with rain. Everything was quite bad. And we went with the guy from Zaytoon, and he came to, do the launch, and he went into the shop, and there was the olive oil lined up, Zaytoon olive oil, from Palestine with the Fairtrade mark. And he just burst into tears. Mm-hmm. This great big tough guy burst into tears, and he said, I never thought I'd see Palestine portrayed in such a positive way. Yeah. That here we are, Palestine's offering you a beautiful product. Mm-hmm. And he said, we're always in the negative press, and here it is, the beauty, we're offering you our beautiful olive oil. Yeah. It was very moving.
But it's so difficult that so many circumstances are involved, and it makes it so difficult because it could all kick off at any minute and that could just end straight away. Yeah. And that's the heartbreaking thing about it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
If something gets in the way, you can't not do anything about. You know?
International trade is so complicated.
Yeah.
It is so tough. I mean, we went from crisis to crisis, didn't we? Because behind the scenes, because, suddenly, I don't know, there'll be an outbreak of a disease and you can't get honey from...
compensation and derogate, all the technical bits that went into this. Like, it was... I can't describe my experience of that role at Tradecraft because it was like you were in a commercial world campaigning whilst crisis managing.
Well, it's
supply chains. So I remember working with, you remember SAD up in South Africa and Kaimos, the raisin growers.
Yes.
So I'd go there every year.
Oh.
And every year there was a, you would commit to, 100 tons of raisins, and half of them would sink on a container, or there'd be a fire in the factory. Yeah. But we had obligations as a Fairtrade certified business that we had to replace those products with Fairtrade products, while still staying committed to the contract with that producer.
It's just
so it's like
hard.
Really
complicated. It was just moving parts all of the time.
Well, it
then
is.
Add to it that you've got food labeling, so whatever you put on the pack has to be true to what you've printed, but you've got all the moving parts of the products in the supply chain happening at once.
I mean, the system, the food system overall, it is broken, and that's what it was so hard, having to work in the system to change the system, So you're, like you said, you're at the heart of the contradictions. So at one point, for example, these are smallholder banana growers from the Dominican Republic. And finally, we managed to persuade this big supermarket in Germany to stock them. Finally, it took ages. They said, okay. So then they stopped them. And within a few months, there was a terrible drought that hit the producers. And so the quality started to go down because there was a drought. The big farmers could overcome it because they had the resources to water their trees, etc. The small farmers just didn't. So the quality started to go down. We didn't have alternative sources we could easily get to. So we got delisted. Took us about 5 years to get Fairtrade bananas back in that store.
It's so complicated.
Because you've got these machines that are producing our food and delivering it to us. And they don't have room for working in a different way and making allowances and working with smallholders to help them overcome their problems. Yeah. And that's, I think, the same, thinking more broadly about how do we change the food system. It is about those companies being ready to engage with farmers to make the transition in this country as well to more environmentally friendly farming. You can't both impose, enormous pressure on prices, and then we want you to do this and this and this and this. Oh, and also we want you to be environmentally friendly, but we're not going to pay you anymore, and you've got to do this.
Do you find that, and this is I'm going to sound cynical here, but certainly from my own experience on a day-to-day basis, as much as the work that we did, do you feel like we've taken any steps back at the same time? Because I still feel like those arguments are as hard as they were 30 years ago. So I was going to ask you look at the rise of things like Shein and TikTok Shop, and fast fashion is actually getting bigger again. And it really challenges me, because I think going back to 2002 or something, really felt like the halcyon days of it. We were just like a rocket shooting upwards. Do you think that we've taken a step backwards, or do you think that the changing environment, politics, social stuff has almost reset the conversation? We've still got just as much work to do again?
I mean, you're right to say we've got just as much work to do, haven't we, Chris? I think, obviously, the zeitgeist will be in a different place at a different time, isn't it? Like we had the school strikes, and you remember the climate strikers, and Greta Thunberg leading the movement of young people on the climate crisis, and all the energy was there. And that's sort of gone now, hasn't it? And so we had our time when Fairtrade was the zeitgeist, and we were absolutely on a roll. And I mean, it always felt really hard behind the scenes, wasn't it? It was a roller coaster. But nonetheless, overall, we were just moving forward, and more people were hearing about it. And in fact, 9 out of 10 people recognised the fair trade mark and knew at a very top level that it was about a fair deal to farmers and workers. More and more companies were coming on board. We had this amazing movement called the Fair Trade Towns, where people would campaign locally for a town to be supportive of fair trade. So we did have the zeitgeist, and our feeling then was that we would create this little bubble within trade where we would show that trade could be done differently, and that bubble would have to grow and grow, and we'd want to change the rules of trade overall. We'd want to change the way people saw and thought about food and the provenance of food, which is also, as you say, just as much about local as it is about fair trade internationally. And it feels like we didn't do that last bit, did we? We haven't yet.
Yeah,
we haven't yet got to change that system. And if anything, the sort of broken food system we live in has got worse, frankly. If you look overall, I don't just mean fair trade, I just mean overall.
In general,
if you look at our food in this country, we're not eating healthy food.
Yeah.
And that's actually not good for people's health, and it's costing the NHS.
But it kind of comes from left field, though, because it's about economy.
Yeah.
And then if there's an issue with economy and bills going up and all that kind of stuff, that's the knock-on effect, which derails what you've been trying to do, and then it's going to knock you back 5-10 years.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, go on, Chris.
No, go for it.
No, well, I was just going to say, I think the only long-term solution is that people have a basic income that's high enough to cover their needs. Because what you can't be doing is playing off one against the other. Farmers need a fair price, and so do the workers on plantations, when that's the case. And then we need a healthy food to be affordable for people on low incomes. So, and you can't be playing those two against each other. Both things have to be true. So the only solution is that we have higher payments, whether it's of pensions, of support for people out of work, and that the living wage is high enough that people can afford to buy healthy food. And then we need to back that up, obviously, by the kind of food you can get in schools, for example, or there's so much that we can do also to work with young people to think more about the food.
I'm just conscious there's so much of your career that you could touch upon, because you've done quite a lot, right?
Are you saying I'm old, Chris?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you're effective.
You've packed a lot in. That's what I'm saying. You've packed a lot in. I'll dumb it down for you.
So right now we're just at kind of ground zero. Yeah. Your role, you were at Fairtrade Foundation, you were chief exec?
I was, yeah.
And then you went on to Flow, so Fairtrade International.
Yeah.
Did your worldview change at all when you went from a more London-centric version of the Fairtrade Foundation into a role that was looking?
Well, actually, it didn't, because I started working on Fairtrade bananas at Fairtrade International. Right. So I started working internationally. Then I came to the UK and spent about 10 years building up Fairtrade here, the Fairtrade Foundation in the UK. Then I went back to the international offices in Germany. So then I went back there. So it all felt like different angles, you're right. Yeah. But one, obviously, working in the UK was more focused with working with the campaigners and with the companies. And then internationally was more focused working with the producers around the world. So there were different aspects of the same, I guess.
Okay.
But yeah, no, you're right. And now I've just got a new job. This week I started my new job, as the chief exec of the Green Party of England and Wales. And this is my first podcast in my new role. So I'm very glad we're all wearing green.
Well, yes.
That's the
memo.
Obviously, yes, exactly.
We got the memo, but I think it just came in kind of through telepathy or something like that.
I was just checking Tim there to see if he's got the memo. But
he's got some green stripes on his shoes. I mean, that's close enough, isn't it? But yeah.
And obviously, like, looking at food policy is one of the issues for the Green Party. Yeah. Obviously, it's one of the issues we absolutely have to address if we want a greener, fairer society. We have to find a solution to some of these challenges.
I was wondering that because obviously, so we were slightly involved with the National Food Strategy stuff. Yeah. So Henry Dimbleby came up the Northeast. We hosted him.
Oh,
have
brilliant.
You looked at that being kicked around government for the last 5 years? Yeah. Will some of that go into your thinking going forward?
Definitely. I mean, obviously, the government is now doing a review of food policy, and they've sort of dusted off this report that was done before, that Henry Dimbleby did for one of the Tory governments. But most people think that report was a really good, comprehensive overview of the solutions that we need to take, but some of it was politically too difficult, so it got sunk. Now this government's dusted it off again. They're looking at what would be a good strategy on food. They've also got a strategy on farming and one on the circular economy as a whole, which includes food and farming. And so absolutely the Greens will want to be feeding in and holding the government to account on those policies to make sure that we start to make some progress. It's a bit worrying at the minute. A lot of the rhetoric is moving away from that idea of the green transition.
Yeah.
And farmers were getting support to do environmentally friendly actions. And the question is that going to stay or is that being undercut?
Okay.
So that's obviously very worrying because you can't expect farmers to make the transition unless they get some additional support.
So this new chapter in your life, Harriet, what do you want to achieve from doing this? Because you really... Seems like a complete transition, but not.
Yes.
You're still flying the flag, you know what I mean? You're still battling and you're moving forward. What do you want to achieve from this?
Well, that's a very good question. I think you're right. For me, it doesn't feel like a big transition. It feels like I've always worked with organisations, often campaigning or finding different ways to work for the social environmental justice. And the thing we were doing in Fairtrade was trying to show what was possible. And that was also through a grassroots social movement that was really second to none in the impact it was having then. And I see some of that continuing. What I would really like to see that the Green Party, which is really on the move, does become that, is able to have more and more impact, both locally and nationally. So we've got, you may know, for many years, the Green Party had one Green MP. We've now got 4. We've got 2 people in the House of Lords. We've got coming close to 900 councillors. So we're really growing and growing. Our membership's grown to over 60,000 now. So there's a real sense that the time has come for the Greens and that people are hungry, actually, for that sense of hope from politics. Going back to what you were saying, people are really hungry to know who can help us change things, really, to find that change and to be an alternative. People get very angry and they can go to reform, or we would hope that they would come with, to the Greens.
That's the reason why that's happening, though, because everyone's sick to death of nothing happening.
I agree.
And that's the whole point, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it just takes somebody to believe in, like yourself, or believe in what you say because you've been there, you've done that, you've got the T-shirt, and you're really passionate about it.
Yeah.
So, great. That's who we want. Do you know what I mean? To make changes. That's it, isn't it? That's anything in politics.
Yeah, and I think that's lots of people obviously are very critical of politics and politicians, but also it's amazing. It's so dependent on people being ready to do that, to give up their time and energy and go along to meetings in an evening and talk about what do we want to do locally or what can we do. Coming here, it was really lovely. I walked in the centre of Sunderland. There was a group, a local food co-op group talking about their work. And I mean, that's amazing. It's that sort of thing's really inspiring, isn't it? And people shouldn't feel that politics is over there and it's not for me, because actually the people involved in political parties are just people like us.
But do you think that your journey helps, though? Because I think there is a lot of disenfranchisement at the minute and people are really disillusioned and you mentioned it, they're just broken and tired.
Yeah.
And actually, whilst the Greens have been around for a long time, they're starting to feel like the progressive movement amongst a lot of other political blobs, I would say. Yeah. And I think given your experience over the last 30 years and what you've done, like I took in the middle of that contradiction, quasi-commercial campaign work, do you think that's going to really help you in terms of obviously you want to grow the membership and grow the party's credibility? Is that really exciting for you?
It's really exciting. And I think you're right to say the experiences that we had at Fairtrade made me see that success breeds success and you just have to get into that positive place. I remember when people first said to us, threw down the challenge of can you make the Fairtrade Mart famous? And at that point, people thought Fairtrade meant be fair to consumers because it was like the Office of Fair Trading or something. And no one had heard of Fairtrade. No one had a clue what it meant, or they thought it was, negative, the campaign coffee we were talking about. And then we ended up in a place where 90% of the public knew the Fairtrade mark and the products were rising. And that has given me a confidence that if a movement gets going, when people start mobilising and organising locally, then definitely you can achieve change. You absolutely can. You're not going to have enormous change. It's always a step in the right direction. The next step to try and see that those greener, fairer policies, including on food, that we need to have.
In the past, this is going to sound really unfair, but I guess some people who weren't Green voters, they would have, and this is a positive, I think, from your perspective and you coming in, and certainly with what you're sitting next to just now, is people, the Labour Party get this, don't they? They might feel like woolly policies or things that can't be achieved, or how are we going to, who's going to pay for that, and all. You've got evidence that there's a hybrid approach to making these things happen.
Yeah,
There's
that's
pragmatism.
beautifully put.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think that's really interesting, because I think the Green Party is battling all the time to show about the practical changes that we can make, that we are a serious political party now. The situation's changed so much. It is a 5-party race, if you like, and that the Greens do have a fantastic practical impact when they're in power locally, for example. But combining that always with keeping the idealism and the vision of where we want to get to. So I think you're right. It's always having the two in play, isn't it? Yes. That you need to have that vision of how things could be better and be working day by day for very small, practical changes that will make a difference to people's lives, and so that they really will see, oh, fantastic, the school's got fresh fruit at lunchtime for my kids or whatever, that you can see practical steps as well as keeping that bigger vision. What
do you see as your biggest challenges in the role? When was day one? When was day one, by the way? Monday was day one.
Yeah.
So okay. We've got you on your 5th day.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, they're all connected. I mean, obviously the biggest challenge is winning. Yeah. I think we have to be honest about the serious threat that the rise of reform poses in this country. And for us to present that the Greens are the serious alternative, I think that and finding that sweet spot where people are both inspired by the Greens and do think they offer that real hope of real change, and at the same time can see that we can practically make a difference. So, and definitely coming back to food, that is one of the areas where we just this week, one of our MPs was speaking about the importance of banning caging animals. Obviously, we've always been calling in the Green Party that we shouldn't be using pesticides that kill bees. Yeah. That's my bee dress that I'm wearing. And we do have a little hive of bees in Northumberland on the bottom of the garden. And we need to protect our bees. And that's just one example where quite often the big lobby calls up and says they need to use this chemical. And it's a chemical that kills the bees. Yeah. And we have to stop those kind of actions and really support the transition to more ecological ways of growing our food, more in harmony with nature somehow.
Yeah.
So, but also finding that solution that we were talking about so that healthy food is available to people at prices they can afford.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We skipped all the middle bit out from Fairtrade to here.
Yeah.
Do you want to say anything about anything else? I mean, you were working as chief executive's RAP last week.
I was.
So how long was that journey? How long were you at RAP for?
So I was there a couple of years, and RAP's a climate action NGO that's working to end waste, including in food. So it's very closely related to end plastics pollution and the terrible mountains of plastic that are littering our world, to end waste of clothes. You were mentioning Shein earlier.
Yeah.
Extraordinary rise in fast fashion and therefore in the amount of clothes being thrown away, and to end food waste. And often those two come together. So I'll tell you about one thing we were doing at RAP. We were, and this is actually a very good example. Oh, so much of our fresh produce is sold wrapped in plastic. Yeah. And it drives people mad. They don't want it. Yeah. Because you get home and it's a very thin plastic, which is the hardest to recycle, which is, so it's the worst of the worst of the worst. Yeah. And it has another bad impact, which is that then people buy more than they need. So you're running around the supermarket, your kids are screaming, you think, I need potatoes, and you grab what looks like the cheapest bag of potatoes, but actually you're buying more than you need. And then it sits in the fridge and then it rots, or it gets the little sprouts coming out. And so actually people are wasting. The average household of 4 people is throwing away £1,000 worth of food a year. And that's money people can't afford to throw away. But it's because it's sold to them in ways that make them think it's cheaper. And they buy it. Yeah. And then they're buying more than they need. And then they're having to throw it away. So that's the kind of, so we were working at WRAP is how could you then get most of our fresh produce sold loose? And at the moment, it's only about 19% is sold without plastic on. And even though the public, over 7 out of 10 of the public say they want to be able to buy loose. So this is a good example because some bananas are sold wrapped in plastic, completely unnecessary. Yeah. Bananas have their beautiful natural packaging.
Yeah.
They don't need it.
But the thing is, if it wasn't wrapped in plastic, you would buy it because there's the choice of not being wrapped in plastic. Do you know what I mean? It's just on the shelf without plastic. We still buy it because we're in the shop and we need to buy it. Do you know what I mean? Because it just gets taken out, put in the fridge without the packaging, and that goes in the bin. What's the point?
I know.
Winds me up.
And most companies are often, they're global. So many of them are also selling, Tesco's, Lidl, Aldi. They're selling all across Europe.
Yeah.
They're not wrapping it in as much plastic there. Yeah. It's much more normal to sell it loose without the plastic. So they know how to do it. So why don't they? Now, obviously, they've set whole systems up in this country to wrap it in plastic. Yeah. But it is an example where actually you could reduce plastic pollution and reduce food waste if people could just buy what they need. And then they'd, especially like people living alone, older people, they don't want 3 peppers. They just want 1. Yeah. But then they have to buy 3 because that's all that's available, and then 2 end up rotting or whatever. So that's some of the kind of policy work that we were doing at WRAP to try and get changes.
I think I'm that in my house because
are you the main culprit? Are you?
No, I'm the opposite. I eat all the leftovers.
Yes,
and if it's going out, I'm like, I do the look and the sniff test. That's it.
Exactly.
I'm going to eat it. I don't care if it's like dates. Take it off. Does it look good? Fine. I'm chopping it up. I'm eating the thing.
Well, you put your finger on it. That is one of the other biggest causes of waste, of food waste, is that people are in a confusion, not surprisingly, between eat by or use by and best before.
Yeah.
2 different things.
Best before is just a quality thing. It doesn't mean anything. You can eat it, but people don't know that. And they think, that's past its date. They'll say it's past its date and they'll chuck it.
Yeah.
Because, at WRAP, we love evidence and data, and we literally go through people's bins. Yeah. So we know people are throwing away whole meal, prepared meals, whole loads of stuff.
It's a generational thing.
I think it is,
that
don't you?
Post-industrial, post-war complex of sanitised food.
Oh, okay, but you can see it both ways. Because my mum...
Pass the sell by the date. I'm going to throw it out.
Well, I hope my kids change because all they hear is me banging on. You're not wasting that. You're not doing that. Left a bit of salmon on the plate. I'm having that. That's the most expensive thing on the plate. You don't... I'm this. I'm fighting the good fight from the kitchen.
Hey, Harriet, the microphone.
Well, I have to.
Yeah.
You have to.
Exactly,
and that feeds into the kids, and then that's going to hopefully rub off on them,
I agree. And I thought what you were going to say, Chris, which is what I think the generational thing. So I grew up, my parents were both in the war. So my mum had never lost that thing of you cannot throw anything away because she grew up with rationing.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter, a little tiny spoon of mashed potato, it went on a plate in the fridge and would, get put in the soup or something, you'd use nothing got thrown away. And I got it off of her, that same
I
obsession.
understand that, but I think there was a gap in time.
I think you're right.
Where people, who were we talking to the other day about this? But the only reference point I can remember is I read a book a while ago. This is going to sound like a total departure, but I'll come back. I read McCarthy's Bar, right, is a book about the Beara Peninsula in the Southern Island. And there's a whole chapter around why all these beautiful farmhouses were getting all of their wooden stained glass windows pulled out. Some of it was because of energy, right, and to keep the houses warm, and a lot of it was about culture and social perception. So there was a perception that if you couldn't afford PVC windows, you were poor. Like
Oh, yeah.
So the facade of the home, like we might go there as tourists and look at, they've ruined that beautiful farmhouse by putting that PVC in. But culturally, it was to display that you'd come out of poverty as a family.
That's keeping up with the Joneses, isn't it?
And I think that happened in food to a degree.
Yeah.
I think even waste culture, bog-offs, and
Yeah.
I can buy, so I'm going to buy it. Doesn't matter, I'll throw it out. It's
Yeah.
This is-
I think there's something
you're
happened
societal,
in the
isn't
last
it?
40
Yeah.
years where there was a very, very, like a small generation of people who had that mentality.
Yeah.
And they lost because I go back to, so my granddad, who died 10 years ago. Sorry if I've just got the date wrong. He'd eat langoustines out of a paper bag and he didn't waste anything.
Yeah.
But something happened after
Something
that.
happened. You're right.
Over
I
a period
think
of
you're
time.
Right. But I also think it's what we're offered, isn't it? And you just really know. You've just mentioned those buy one get one free. I mean, that's a mad.
It is mad.
That's mad. And it's often not healthy food that people are doing that with. You know, you're not buy a bunch of bananas and get another bunch of bananas free.
Yeah.
It's much more,
Yeah.
a multi-pack packet of crisps or something. And it's all that, we are addicted to sugar and salt. It's really hard not to be honest, isn't it? Because that's so much what we're fed and what you buy if you go out is got too much sugar and salt in, which has been proven that it is addictive, and it's hard to stop eating that packet of crisps once it comes by you.
It is.
Yeah, but it all kicked in. I mean, the 80s kicked in where it was like fat's bad for you, and everything was low fat, and that's the better way. But they just replaced that with sugar, and it was a complete, not a farce. Do you know what I mean? It was all false.
Yeah,
But it's not. It's like good fats are good fats, and you should. There's no conversation about that as well.
Yeah, that's
Fat's
true.
bad.
Yeah.
We need to get back to it. No, it's not. I'll put that knob of butter in. Avocado, salmon, nuts, oils. Do you mean?
Yeah.
That's what we should be talking about. We do talk about it. We bang on about it. But it's how you get that across to everybody.
So how did you get into such healthy food?
Are you laughing there, Tim?
No, Dan,
That was
for
hilarious.
over 22 years. And he's never been anything other than skinny.
Yeah.
But I was overweight
But
at
I've
one
seen
point.
the picture
Yeah.
from before I knew him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was fed just as you do as a kid, cereal, bread, all that kind of stuff. It's probably overeating. So therefore, I've got inflammatory arthritis. I've had so many health issues, right? The only thing that's stopped it is I changed my health when I was 33 by the help of somebody else. Said, look, come and see me, a physical trainer, went through the caliper testing, did all of the kind of measurements. It's science, right? I went, right, so Dan, this point there, that point there, this point there, that's your sugars, that's your carbs, this, right? Give me a whole dietary plan and a regime exercise, 3 months, bang, changed my whole life.
Incredible.
It works. I know it works because I'm proof in point.
Yeah.
I've been 17.5 stone at one point. I've been unfit, unhealthy, right? And by dropping the gluten and the dairy, it was the final thing, dairy, I get less inflammation in my body now. I'm fitter and healthier than I was at 19 when I couldn't get out of a chair because of the hip inflammation and stuff like that. So
Incredible.
I'm tried and tested. I know it works. So I bang on about it all the time.
You're the walking
I really
advert.
do
Yeah.
because I can tell you, I can say,
Yeah.
and I just pick my things. I let the kids have what they have, but I'm an advocate for healthy eating. I do something on a Saturday, so let's maybe have one meal where you can kind of go to town, but you're going to suffer the next day because my body can't take this anymore because I know it, right?
that's true.
I've done my
Change.
DNA, I do run my bloods once a year. I'm on it. So you can't tell me I don't know. I know all the information. It's tried and tested. So that's why I do
Yeah.
kind of
But we
shout
have to
about it.
accept most people aren't going to be
They're not.
quite as
But
obsessed.
it's took me a
Isn't it?
long
It's
time
got-
to figure it out because all I had was doctors. There's some pills to reduce the inflammation. There's got to be something else. It took me 7 years to kind of keep trying to figure out what was wrong with it.
Yeah.
7 years.
Incredible.
I found out myself.
Yeah.
So I'm taking this in my hands, in my control, and then I'm going to move forward with it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I met people who knew about it. They give me it's almost like their formula, this golden ticket to health. Fantastic. So I know the
Amazing.
formula.
But we have to accept most people aren't going to. So we have to think, what is it that we can do to help people?
But
and I think
this
some of it
knowledge
is
helps.
addressing knowledge helps.
Do you know what I mean?
I think it's knowledge, learning that
Listen
there's
to
another
me.
way.
Take 10% of it and apply it to your own life. You know.
Yeah. Trying to tackle the ultra processed food industry.
Yeah.
And that was a big one in the Henry Dimbleby report that you were talking about. I mean, we have to tackle head on the industry, and they won't like it, but it would. I think having regulation has to be one of the ways forward.
Yeah.
I think it has to be. But you did mention dairy, and I
gonna
have
say, what a
to
great
admit,
segue.
I have to admit, okay, I love dairy, and
Mm-hmm.
I have brought something with me today. Can I move on to that?
You can,
Yes.
but what I can say is I put smoked Northumberland cheese on my burger once a week when I do it. I still drip in now and again, so I'll still, but 98% of my life is that. But I've got to have that flavour sensation
now
on
and
a
then a
Saturday.
bit,
Do you know what I mean?
I know, yeah, the
so
little
why
treat.
not?
Okay, that's
but my
a good
body
way
can
round.
handle that kind of thing. So
that's a good way round.
So if I do now, but now because of the, you get obsessive about it, so you don't want to put it into your diet. Now, if I have a slice of bread, it'll probably be fine, but because I'm on this journey, I can't touch it.
Yeah.
And that's my issue.
Yeah.
But I know for a fact I'll probably be fine. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
But it's not every day.
No, that's right.
So
And
that's
it's
what I'm
getting the
saying.
balance.
Yeah.
It's very
It's balance.
impressive. Yeah.
So you
So
took us
what
global, now we're going to go local.
So what we're going to go hyper local.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
now.
Didn't bring that to a car crash, Chris, did it? No?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Thank you,
I
sorry.
think it was perfect.
Oh.
Yeah,
He has
mate.
milk in his tea as
Absolutely.
well. Like,
And milk in his tea, yeah. I do too. I have to have
you
milk
should
in my
see
tea.
the amount of milk in
Oh,
his
is that
tea.
right? Tiny
But I have a
drop.
single.
I have,
It's a single drop.
And some nuts whilst I'm
Yes.
there.
Literally one drop.
But I have
Is
one
it?
cup of a cup of tea a day, so there you go. Anyway.
Well, I have more than that.
Yeah,
That's
you-
one of my tea and coffee, my weaknesses. Okay, so and
This is
dairy.
exciting.
So we live in the Tyne Valley, in Slaley,
Yeah.
and we probably have England's smallest flock of milking sheep. So we've got 8 milking sheep, and the lambs have just left them, sadly. And my husband makes cheese. He makes sheep's cheese.
Sheep cheese.
He makes sheep's cheese. So it's hyper-local to the thing that Chris is interested in. It's sold locally in a little deli nearby, in Corbridge have sold it. Great, the cheese shop in Jesmond.
We're going to get Moz on
So-
shortly, actually. She wants
Okay,
to come
oh
on.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. The Lord Crew Arms in Blanchland or the pub in Battlesteads have been selling it. So it's hyper-local cheese sold locally, very, very small. However, it's also seasonal, which is another key thing, actually, isn't it? About is helping us all get back into eating seasonally and not expecting to have strawberries on Christmas Day or something,
Yes.
but having what's available at the different times. And so sheep's cheese you only make for a short season because obviously they then have to stop being milked so that they can get pregnant again, have lambs, and round you go. So they have a nice break from being milked. So in the break, Steve made some cow's milk cheese. Do you want to try some?
Yes. Do they have names?
The cheeses or the
The
sheep?
cheese? Both.
Can
Well, people give names to the cheese, don't they?
I
Like,
ask a technical question?
Ask a
Is
technical-
sheep's cheese lactose free as well? Because goats
It's
is,
much
isn't it?
better for you. It's much better.
Apparently
Like,
it
if you
is,
have
yeah,
high
yeah,
cholesterol,
yeah.
it's much better to eat sheep's cheese. But
yeah, I've heard that.
yes,
I just wanted to clarify it because I've heard it, but I haven't
Clarified cheese.
clarified.
clarify your
But-
cheese. Right, you're going to try some.
Yes.
Are
I'm on
you
that.
not
Are you
going to?
going in? Can I try the cheese but not the cracker, please?
Oh yes, okay. So this is like a sort of Tom variety. Do you want some as well over there?
I don't eat
You don't eat.
any cheeses or any dairy that isn't
I was waiting for you to finish the sentence. I thought you were going to end with "I don't eat."
I was just like trying to figure out where's the line here.
Oh, it's
Sheep-
soft as
Sheep
well.
and goats,
It is,
no.
but that's
See
the
what you
thing.
think.
Yeah,
I don't eat the products of sheep or goats.
No.
because I tried
Okay.
because I used to eat a load of yogurt,
you like
and
it?
that's the final straw that I took out of the diet. So I was trying to find sheep and goats, and I think somebody recommended going to this
Oh.
because
Nice.
it's Oh, it's nice.
But this is cow's milk. But just because in the winter he's going to make cow's milk cheese,
Yeah,
Okay,
and then in the summer he's going to move over.
it's quite creamy, isn't it?
that's lovely.
Do you like it?
Yeah.
That comes from Baysleep Farm. It's their
Oh, we
milk.
work with
Yeah.
Basley. Yeah.
You know Baysleep? Yeah, exactly. Their milk. So
Raw milk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Steve's a big believer in raw milk.
Yeah.
But honestly, they're under quite a lot of pressure, raw milk producers.
Yeah.
From
Why is that? Why is that, Harry?
from Food Standards Agency
Really?
are very nervous
Technical.
about it.
Is that
They're
because
very
of how it's
nervous.
processed?
About
Because it's
Legalities.
not pasteurised.
That's
so it's
the thing.
not boiled.
Yeah.
So there's a little loophole. So they used to come on our markets. They would
Yeah.
basically, so they'd come down and sell raw milk because technically we were a farmer's market.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that was a loophole that allowed them to sell.
That's ridiculous.
Otherwise, people go to their site and they buy milk from a vending machine.
Yeah, it is, because you still have to go through all the health and safety checks. Obviously, your dairy. This is Pry House Dairy.
Really good.
That's
Do you
really
like it?
nice. That
Yeah.
that would go well on a burger melted, I think.
I need to get Steve to come and do one of our markets one
Oh
time.
yes, he would love to.
We'd love to.
I think
honestly,
he'd love
'cause
to
we
do that.
recently lost a dairy farm,
No.
or a cheesemaker called Simon. He's been on the podcast.
Yeah, he's on the wall.
Based in Weardale, so he was making cheese out of an old
Oh, I know
POW
him. We
can.
know
You know
him.
Simon. You know
He's
Simon.
fantastic.
Simon's great. So
He's
Simon-
so great.
Yeah, we've known
he
Simon
was
for years.
very supportive to
Yeah.
Steve. Really helpful.
Well, he's lovely.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know, he's wrapped up.
I did
Yeah.
hear that. Yeah.
So I don't like to see cheesemakers disappear.
Too
So it's
tough?
Really, really good.
Is that why he was the market too tough? What did he?
I think, yeah. I think, well, you'll see on the podcast, there was varying things going on. It was getting too hard for him.
Yeah.
He made the cheese, he sold the cheese, he packed the cheese, he delivered the cheese. He had no support. And partly because he wanted that control, because he loved, he loved what he did. But also when he talked to us, he used to say to us that he was so obsessed with quality that he almost had a bit of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
About worrying all the time about
Well,
whether his cheese was good
I
enough.
think it is really worrying for them, for small producers in particular. Is
Yeah.
it good enough? And what about the, food standards and what's going to happen
Yeah.
here and there? It is.
I think he put a lot of pressure on himself as well. He just
Yeah.
felt like that because he cared so much.
Yeah.
And there's a balance I think
Yeah.
you need to get to, whereas
Exactly.
you've
That's
got to
why-
be
yeah.
80% there, I think, and then put it out. I think he really stressed about it, really kind of
No, he did.
overthought it,
He did. So that's why whenever I hear about a new producer, it
Yes.
is literally like a bat signal
Yeah.
going into the air.
Fantastic.
And we get excited.
Yeah.
That's brilliant, because we are absolutely right. I mean, local small producers need supporting because they're trying to compete and survive in a market dominated by the big boys and with sort of huge industrial processes.
commoditised
Yeah,
products,
exactly.
aren't
It
they?
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's commoditized. That's
So
exactly
we'd
right.
say, we run a market from here on a Sunday.
Oh, do you?
So
For
the
sheep,
whole for
sheepfold.
sheepfold.
Yeah.
But you still get that challenge around value.
Yeah.
People, it's very expensive.
Yes.
£5 for a wedge
Yes.
of cheese.
Yeah.
You know, and you want to. I kind of want to flip into my campaign mode and
Yeah.
say, well, just buy less but buy better.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know.
Yeah.
It's but what the people will if they see the value in it for themselves. That's it. But it's
Yes.
it's really tough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
really
it's
tough, isn't it?
crossing that thing where you think it's worth it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
No, I
you'll
think
buy
you're right.
a sugary drink from Starbucks is like £6 or something, but you won't buy a nice
Exactly.
block of cheese.
Yeah.
It's nuts. It's mental,
Yeah.
So that's
So,
what winds me
yeah.
up. It's
Big
what you
fan.
say,
Yeah.
value.
I want to speak
That's
to Steve.
that's
Big
lovely.
fan.
It's kind of it's still there. Do you know?
Isn't it? It's really got, it's unique. It's got a
Yeah.
unique flavour.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
great.
that's
I love it.
great. That's
really
lovely.
nice.
So it's also really nice for me because then, when you're working and thinking, well, at the Green Party, what are our policies on food or farming? It is really good that I've got in my head, what's happening with our local farmer
Yeah, of
or
course.
what's happening, what Steve's struggling with as
Yeah.
he's trying to make it at home and sell it. And so it gives you that grounding in the realities
Yeah, 100%.
of producing food and farming.
Which I think is going to really sit well for you when you kind of move this role forward.
Yeah.
I think it's important.
yeah.
The trust and everything.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
No,
Right.
that's right.
I know we haven't got you for much longer. We need to go on to the menu very
Oh,
quickly.
the menu.
The
Oh,
menu.
dear. Okay.
This is the fun bit.
Good, good,
That's all
good.
being fun.
Lovely. Right. What am I doing? Choosing.
Choose
You're choosing
anything from
you want.
Yeah,
Right?
I'm only allowed one thing.
No?
No.
What do we
we'll go with one first because we tend to confuse everybody and ourselves with this thing. So we'll do Greg's order last, but let's pick anything from there, please.
I'm just
Anything you want.
picking anything.
Yeah,
Anything you want.
And
Just
then what
go,
happens?
Go wild. You tell us, and then we'll tell you what
And
it is.
you're going to tell me what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going for 3-second rule.
Oh, nice,
I like
nice
this
one.
one.
Right, so I'll just grab that back. 3-second rule. There's a bit of nuance in this thing, isn't it? It's right. So if you drop something on the floor, right, do you have a 3-second rule? The 3-second rule is kind of interpreted how what is the thing you're dropping on the floor, right? And what is the area that you're dropping it onto? Or are you just, it's on the floor, that's it, I'm done. So what's your rule?
Well,
let's go for it.
as we were discussing, I'm obsessed about not wasting anything, and particularly not wasting food. So I'm afraid it's dust it off and pop it in your mouth. And I'm afraid that's how I brought up my kids. And I did hear once, though, that children were getting more and more allergies because one of the reasons was because they were eating, everything was so clean and so sanitized that they weren't getting enough mud in their diet. If you like. They weren't building up that resistance to bacteria. So that was my excuse to myself in my head. I thought, oh, it'll be good for them, really.
No, I think it is. My partner says the same thing. Everything's too clean, too sanitized. Yeah. I don't have a 3-second.
But obviously, you've got to be careful. People have to use their judgment, don't they? Because you have got to be careful not to make someone ill.
Of course, but it depends on what it is and where it is. I mean, that's the rule, really, isn't it?
What's your no? What would you drop?
But you know what you mentioned? When you dropped it, somebody mentioned, like, in the car, down the side of the seat. Because everything
going too far.
because everything lands down there.
Exactly. That's quite
And you don't know what's coming up with it.
Better not.
Better not. So, there's things like that.
And then there's things like, the toast with butter and jam lands there. Always.
Or you're outside, it's on gravel, or you can't wash it off, or ice cream on sand, all this kind of it's kind of...
There are some no-go areas.
Yeah, you don't. But
I think we're going for common sense here, aren't we?
Yes.
So let's add on to that. What's the worst thing you've ever eaten, Harriet?
What's the worst? Oh, okay. I did once eat. I'm actually vegetarian.
Yeah.
But I was
always vegetarian.
Well, most of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. When I was my adult life, all my adult life. Yeah. And I was in my 20s, and I was in India, and a family were really thrilled to have me around, and they gave me, I dread to think what parts of what animal were in this dish. And that was definitely the worst thing. And I had to eat it because I didn't want to offend them. They'd gone to such an effort to make this special dish. And they were so pleased. And they just assumed I would eat it.
What was the red flag? What made you think, this is not what I recognise?
Yes.
Oh, well, you can. If you don't eat meat, you smell it straight away. You know straight away.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I just thought I've got to. I just have to have a little bit.
It is. Yeah. Is there a situation now where you'll be like, no? Because you just know who you are and you know what, know not to offend in a way, and how you explain that,
in that same situation, I might make the same decision now. Okay. But as you say, 99% of the time, I'm not at all shy to say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't eat fish. But I love vegetables, so that's also, I'm really happy just to have whatever the veggies are. If people make meat and 2 veg, I'll just have the veg. So there's always a solution, isn't there?
Another question, another thing from the menu.
Like,
so one more.
When it spins or something.
Roulette.
Okay, that one. It's like that, isn't it?
In this room.
Okay, I think I'm gonna go clean plate. Is that the same theme? You see, I'm after a theme here.
Oh, right. Okay, clean plate. Right.
Don't leave any food. Is it?
Don't leave it. Yeah.
Right. Have you ever licked a plate clean?
I might have done.
Please, you asked the question.
Yes.
I'll ask anything.
Yes. And also,
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't waste
You can't.
the last little delicious bit, can you?
It is.
Yeah. The thing is, there's the finger seems to be more acceptable than picking the plate
actually picking it up.
Yeah.
I feel I might have done that though.
Yeah.
I sometimes use a sneaky thumb.
Sneaky thumb.
But would you?
It just.
Would you only do this in private company, or would you do this in a restaurant?
I was thinking that. So obviously we do it at home, and then we're out with the kids in a restaurant, and then me and my husband are going like that, and they go, "Stop! Don't."
I know. Sounds like
I don't think you should do that. I think that's really embarrassing.
Saying that, my little girl does it with a ketchup. I'm like, really? You kind of just can't. I'm like, why didn't you just get a spoon and start eating?
Ketchup with a spoon.
I also really love eating with my fingers. I think food just tastes more delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm with your daughter. Just
Yeah,
lick it.
just
lick
all
that
right. So,
ketchup.
okay,
That's it.
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could.
I guess it brings you really close into the
Yeah.
food, doesn't it?
You could have the good excuse flying the flag of, well, I don't advocate for waste, so I've got to do it. Do you know what I mean? Everything on this plate.
Exactly. That's what it
That's like
is.
a policy. I'm gonna ban cutlery.
Okay, I can now guarantee that will not be a Green Party policy.
Wash your plate before returning. Yeah. So we've got a final question.
Go for it.
What's your Greg's order?
Oh, what's my Greg's order? Well, do you know what? I haven't had it. Well, my normal order would be a coffee, I'm
Yeah.
afraid. That's
Okay.
what I go in for.
Okay.
Coffee.
Cup
Yeah.
of coffee, get a lovely...
Do you like that coffee?
I do, and
Yeah.
it's Fairtrade.
Yes.
Fairtrade coffee, and they're a great local company, aren't they? But the thing I want to have is the famous vegan sausage roll.
Yeah.
And somehow, just one way and another, every time I've been, they've run out, or then I haven't been near a Greg's. So that's on my to-do list.
Yeah, they're quite a popular
haven't had a
item, aren't
Greg's
they?
to-do list.
Yeah, a Greg's to-do list. Yeah.
Have you had them?
The vegan sauce. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have, yeah.
And good?
Yeah.
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 I've gotta have it.
I've never had one before, but I'm the same. I
Okay.
haven't eaten it for a while, but
Yeah.
I had the first corned beef pasty I've had in 15 years about a month ago.
And?
It was delicious. So I must say, I mean,
Yeah, it's got to
That's
be.
it.
You
Yeah.
see the queues outside. It's got to be.
yeah. So why not? So it was one of those days like, okay, on this Saturday I will have a
This is
Greg's
my
pasty.
chance.
This
I'm
is the
gonna have
chance,
it.
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, I think I earned it after 15 years. Though.
I
Do you think?
you did.
Harriet?
And
Yeah.
do you think I'm going to pass a Greg's on the way back to the station?
You'll probably pass one every 20 metres.
Yeah, I think,
I may be slipping in for that
you'll
vegan
have
sausage
to.
roll at last. Actually, can I
Can I
tell you
ask you to
something? One
sign
of the
my book,
people
please?
who was one of the sort of people who grew founders and grew Greg's lives in the same village as me.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Brilliant. All right.
Got the, oh
Green-
no,
green
this
pen.
is embarrassing.
Green
I'm not
pen.
doing. Oh, green
Green
pen.
pen. Oh, please.
Sure? Hang on, there's a grain. Is there a grain in there?
There was a green
was a
because I
green. Was a
signed
green.
the.
Oh, I've lost grain.
I signed.
Oh, did you sign the green wall?
I did.
Green pen on the
I
green
can
wall.
see it actually.
Oh, hang on.
It's just there, Chris. Can you reach your
Hold on.
hand up?
Tim, could you pass? Sorry.
There. Yeah.
You got it.
Oh.
Are you looking blind? Yeah. Hang on.
Felt like I was the,
There you go.
That's why it's in that old main movies. Nightmare, you know, with the dungeon keeper and the helmet on. The flying.
Tim, what's the answer? What?
Oh, it looked like Chris is trying to find his phone in the dark there. You know what I mean? When you're in the bedroom and you're trying to find your phone on the side
But you
table.
know what? We've talked about lots of really serious issues
Yes, of
about
course.
food today. But I also think the best thing is to just love and enjoy food, isn't it?
100%.
Because it's
Completely
such a
right.
great way of, sitting down together, having fun, enjoying yourself. And although we got to address all the serious issues, we mustn't take the joy out of delicious
We can't.
food. And-
We can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of having fun with it at the end because
Exactly,
we all
with
have a
the
memory
menu.
from these things
Yeah.
in life.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
Have you heard
exactly.
of Caroline Steele, the writer, architect?
No.
So she wrote a book called Sitopia, and it's all about the importance of food and place.
Okay.
And she came up and did a talk for us.
Ah.
And she came up with a stonker of a quote. And I've used it. And she said, because she's talking about policy, and she said, food is too big to see because it's everywhere.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really powerful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's one of the challenges that we have. It's so entrenched
It's everything.
in everything
It's part
we do.
of
It's
all
everything.
it's part of our culture.
People can't see it as a separate
part
thing.
of our daily lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.